In the golden age of Hollywood, young people flocked to Tinseltown. By the thousands, they were lured by the promise of the glamorous life, of endless parties, and great wealth. But more times than not, it ended with broken dreams, debt, and sadness. Yet those lucky few who made it big often found that fame was not as wonderful as they thought. An army of studio execs, managers, and producers waited to take advantage of innocent young girls. Quick romances and quicker marriages caused headlines, heartbreak, but in the case of Lana Turner, romance led to homicide. Welcome to History is Criminal. I'm your host, Mick Biddick, and joining me, my romance, the unqualified, unapologetic, my wife, Kimberly. This week, we jump back to 1950s Hollywood and the shocking death of a low level hood at the hands of the teenage daughter of Lana Turner, Cheryl Crane. Kim, are you ready for a Hollywood glamour story gone horribly wrong?
Sure am. The 1950s, when everyone smoked, repressed their feelings, and occasionally committed murder in satin gowns. I'm ready. Let's dig into the dirty past again.
Born on the 8th of June, 1921, in a small mining town of Wallace, Idaho, Julia Jean Mildred Frances Turner. What a name. Studios would later rechristen her Lana. Her childhood was not easy. After the family moved to San Francisco, her parents split up and she ended up in the foster system. Lana later reported that she was abused while in foster care. Then in 1930, her father was the victim of a brutal murder. He was back in Idaho working the mines. To offset his low pay, he gambled. He had a reputation as a good card player, and some claim that he was a con man and a bootlegger. He had a run of luck playing cards and was bragging that he was going to use the money to buy his little girl a bicycle. That night, he was jumped and beaten to death. The crime went unsolved. And in 1936, after Lana was reunited with her mother, the two moved to Los Angeles. By her teen years, she already possessed the striking beauty she would become famous for. In those years between childhood and Hollywood, little is recorded about her. It'd be one afternoon while cutting school that she was spotted at the Top Hat Cafe, not Schwab's drugstore like the legend says. She was also not discovered by a studio exec, but by a film reporter named William Wilkerson. Wilkerson saw the 15-year-old girl, whom he described as the perfect girl. Wilkerson was the editor of the Hollywood Reporter and knew all the movers and shakers in the industry. He approached the cute, very young blonde and asked if she wanted to be in the movies. Now, the story could take a very dark turn here, but he was on the level. And she answered, I don't know. I'll have to ask my mother.
You know, when I skip work for something to drink, no one ever offers me a movie deal. Just saying.
Me either. I mean, there was that one time when they mistake me for Daniel Craig, but other than that,
Yeah, in your dreams.
in your dreams. Mom apparently said okay, and she was cast in a bit part in the movie, quote, They Won't Forget, which pretty much everybody immediately forgot. But no one could forget the girl in the tight sweater. Now, it's kind of creepy because she was only 16 when the film was shot. It was director of the film, Merv Leroy, that suggested she drop the name Judy, nickname she was known by, for something a little more flashy. And she chose Lana. But to millions, she was simply known as the Sweater Girl, a name, by the way, she absolutely hated because she felt it diminished her as a serious actress. When Leroy switched studios, he took Lana with him to MGM, where she remained on contract until 1956. Those early years of her film career were unremarkable, but the photos of her in that tight sweater sold like, well, pictures of a hot girl in a tight sweater. She would become one of the favorite pinups of GIs of World War II. MGM realized what a hot property they had and started giving Lana bigger roles in films with bigger budgets. In 1941, she co starred in The Ziegfeld Girl, making her a legitimate star. It also turned out that Lana just wasn't a hot young thing in a sweater, but she could act. As roles poured in with some of Hollywood's most famous leading men, she had become the new hit girl. Hollywood has always had a habit of taking young stars, making them grow up too fast, leading often to tragic ends. Claire Bow was the original it girl, but her career was wrecked when a former assistant revealed secrets about her sex life that were just far too scandalous for the 1930s. Being a sexy vamp on film was okay, but having a wild sex life for real was not. Then Jean Harlow stepped in to fill the void as the blonde bombshell. Harlow would also fall victim to scandal, but in her case, it was a love triangle or maybe love square involving her husband, Paul Byrne, Clark Gable, Byrne's ex girlfriend, and Harlow. It all ended with Byrne committing suicide. While her career continued, it never fully recovered. Odd, however, that Clark Gable didn't seem to get sidelined by the scandal. Harlow would pass away from liver failure in 1937, just as Hollywood found its next vivacious blonde, Lana Turner.
The Circle of Life, Hollywood edition. Scandal, heartbreak, repeat.
When her career started, Lana would have been a sophomore in high school. So it's understandable that she wouldn't have been all that worldly. She went straight from skipping math class to go to the malt shop to bright lights and Hollywood premieres. It would be a shocking way to end adolescence. It turned out that along the way, she never quite got the hang of picking good men. Surprising, considering some of the scum Hollywood had then and now when it came to how they treated young ladies. She got her first top billing in Dancing Coed. Sounds like just a top notch film. In the cast, playing himself was bandleader Artie Shaw. Turner later wrote that she was a 19-year-old girl recoiling from her first lost love. Shaw was famous, flashy, and at first charming. In reality, Shaw saw himself as an intellectual and looked down on Lana. Despite her public image as a blonde bimbo, she was actually very bright and not prone to backing down. Quickly, it became clear that Shaw was jealous of Lana's success and popularity. He demanded that she stop wearing makeup, dress less attractive, and basically wait on him. As time went on, he became angry that she spent so much time working at the studio. The marriage was over in just 1 year, and the divorce was not amicable.
Imagine and marrying a movie star and then being shocked that she, well, worked in the movies. The classic fragile man ego. Can't handle a woman who shines brighter than him.
Her second marriage was also a mess. She married Joseph Stephen Crane, a famous restaurateur who had played in some B movies in the 40s. He would later write, "To be honest, I was a very poor actor." But what he lacked in acting skills, he made up for in the restaurant business. He and Lana met in 1942 and were married on the 17th of July of that same year. One major problem, he was already married. Now, in his defense, he thought that his quickie Mexican divorce was legal in the United States. Turns out it wasn't. Of course, the gossip columnists had a field day with this marriage mix up. Crane was able to get legally divorced from his earlier wife, which was good because it turned out that Lana was pregnant. The couple were remarried in March 1943, and Cheryl Crane was born on the 25th of July that year. The marriage ended for good in 1944, but Lana and Crane remained friends and co parents to Cheryl for the rest of their lives. If her personal life was a mess, her professional life was going great. In 1946, she was cast in The Postman Always Rings Twice. It was a big departure from the usual rom com roles she played. This was a serious drama, and she knocked it out of the park. The film was a massive success, and the studio was now willing to cast her in more serious roles. This was followed by other big roles. In 1948, she was married again to a millionaire socialite whose brother owned the New York Yankees. Lana started a downturn both professionally and personally following the birth of a stillborn child in 1949. She started to suffer from depression that peaked in 1951 when she tried to kill herself by cutting her wrist. It was her business manager that saved her life by breaking down the bathroom door and getting her medical attention. This was followed by an affair with co star Fernando Lamas, who reportedly physically assaulted her.
It's amazing how the headlines only cared when she was glamorous or scandalous, never when she was just human. For all the lights and cameras, there sure wasn't much support when things got dark.
She bounced back with a successful role in The Bad and the Beautiful, where she played an alcoholic movie star, a role that some say wasn't that big of a stretch. Just a week before the movie was to be released, she got divorced again. This was followed by some more forgettable roles. In 1953, she married Lex Barker. This marriage lasted until 1957. Lana's daughter, Cheryl, would later claim that Barker had raped her multiple times when she was between the ages of 10 and 13. So Barker is a complete scumbag who really needs to be just fed to alligators.
Yep.
She claimed that this was the reason for the end of the marriage. She also claimed that no charges were filed to avoid scandal. So, pedo walks in order to skip embarrassing press. That is just absolutely disgusting.
That's Hollywood for you.
In 1957, Lana was filming The Lady Takes a Flyer, a somewhat forgettable rom com in which she plays, obviously, a female pilot who goes and gets together with a male pilot. While filming, she started to receive phone calls and flowers from a man named Johnny Steele. He was charming, swarthy good looks, and came along just as Lana was looking for something new. She later wrote, "That's how the darkest period of my life began." His life was like a novel. As a child, he was sent to military school, was a Marine in World War II, had converted to Islam to marry a woman from Turkey, and spent time in China after the war. In 1948, Sir Charles Hubbard brought Johnny with him to California and paid Johnny $85,000. Remember, these are 1948 dollars. $85,000 over the next 2 years. Johnny told the IRS that that was just a loan, but the evidence supports that he was actually blackmailing Sir Charles Hubbard. When Hubbard got arrested for marijuana possession, Johnny left him and took a job working as a bouncer. His boss was the head of the LA mob, Mickey Cohen. The mob had a long history in Hollywood, most famously when Bugsy Siegel took over the Extras Union. It turns out that where there's a lot of money, there's organized crime. Cohen was just the latest mob boss to run LA. Johnny quickly moved from bouncer to bodyguard and money carrier for Cohen.
Johnny Steele. Great name for a romance novel or even a porn star. And clearly, the best way to recover from a heartbreak is to date someone on the mob's payroll. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, it turns out that Johnny was really John Stampino, a small time hood and suspected gigolo. He was always on the arm of an older woman who he lived off of.
See, I was almost right. Johnny Steele, gigolo.
LAPD had a file on him that said his MO was to stay with a woman until the money ran out and then move on to the next. By the time he met Lana, he was twice married, though neither lasted more than 2 years. If if that was his plan with Lana, which is hard to say, he lied and told her he was 3 years older than her when in reality he was actually 3 years younger. He, of course, also gave a fake name. That is, I do kind of have to digress here for a little bit. At this point, Lana was still like in her 20s. So this wasn't like some old crone he was trying to. This was one of the most beautiful women in the world at the height of her Hollywood career. So he's making a power play trying to move on this. Anyway, so not only was he 3 years younger, but he, of course, had also given her a fake name. Now, Lana said, I believed the lies he told me. And by the time I learned they were lies, it was too late. I was trapped, helpless, because of fear for my own life, for Cheryl's, and my mother. She slowly warmed to Johnny. Now, his kind of over pushing with the flowers and the gifts by today's standards would seem a little pushy, but it actually won Lana over. The gifts became bigger, including the jewelry that she actually wore in the film Peyton Place. He also gave gifts to Cheryl, although Cheryl said she never was a big fan of John. Lana, after learning the truth about Johnny, was hoping the relationship would just end naturally. She had gone to England to film Another Time, Another Place, and hoped Johnny would just find another woman and move on, saving her from possible confrontation with him.
The classic, maybe he'll just go away on his own plan. She went to England for a movie and hoped he would move on.
But what Lana would later call maybe something sick about herself, she found herself missing Johnny and asked him to join her in England. Johnny became bored in England really quick and was mad because Lana didn't want to be seen in public with him. Maybe it was that, or maybe it's just he's a criminal asshat, that he first became physically abusive towards Lana. Because his real name, Johnny, had entered England using a fake passport in the name Johnny Steele, Lana used this information to get him deported back to the US. Her hope was that this would end the relationship. That hope would be short lived. She had even made the move to stop in Acapulco before coming home to the US. She wanted time away from Johnny so he would move on, but she also wanted time away from her daughter, Cheryl, who was having her own issues, running away, and other troubles that were landing her in the gossip columns. And now maybe they should have got her some counseling after the sexual abuse by her stepfather, but scandal. Cheryl would later tell Larry King that she just wanted to be Jane Doe, that the constant spotlight was what led to her rebellion. Lana tried to arrive in Mexico quietly, but not only did Johnny meet her at the airport, but he brought the press with him. This convinced Lana that Johnny could do whatever he wanted. In Mexico, Johnny continued the abuse, even at one point pulling a gun on her when she was trying to throw him out of their room. It was while in Mexico that she learned she'd been nominated for an Academy Award for the film Peyton Place. Now she was able to put her foot down. She informed Johnny that there was no way he was going to accompany her to the Oscars. In fact, there was no way she would be seen in public with a known gangster. She was still as image conscious as always. But when her plane landed in LA, the press was there to photograph her and Johnny. At the airport, Lana and Cheryl were also reunited. A picture of the three appeared in the papers with the headline, Lana Turner returns with mob figure.
Of course, the headline doesn't say Oscar-nominated actress returns home. It's mob girlfriend at the airport. Priorities, people. You can almost hear her thinking, seriously? I'm finally nominated and this is my front page moment?
It is likely that Johnny had tipped off the press in both Mexico and LA. This seems like an attempt on his part to force the relationship into the public. Maybe if it were public knowledge, then Lana would no longer feel the need to hide him. It would later be discovered that Johnny had other motives to be with Lana, motives that involved Mickey Cohen. On the night of the Academy Awards, Lana showed up with Cheryl, but no Johnny. They were the epitome of class. Lana in a form fitting white gown, Cheryl, now a young lady of 14, but looking much older. One famous photo shows the mother and daughter at their table with Cary Grant squatting between them to give his greetings. It was the image of Hollywood royalty. Things seemed perfect. Lana said that she didn't expect to win, believing her role in The Postman was much better than Peyton Place. The award would go to someone else. Joanne Woodward would win, but that would be far from the worst thing that would happen that evening.
Everything glittered pearls, gowns, even Gary Grant. Meanwhile, fate was quietly loading the next scene. Lights, camera, action.
She arrived home later that evening. Cheryl was already home, being 14 and not going to the after parties. She found Johnny in a rage. "You'll never leave me home again. That's the last time." He started to talk down to her about losing the Oscar and calling her a drunk. Then he started hitting her. He smacked her across the face, sending her flying backwards. She smashed into their bar, sending glass shattering across the floor as she fell. He picked her up, yelling and hitting her again. When the beating ended, the couple went to bed. Lana would later explain how fear and embarrassment prevented her from leaving. Today, we might call this battered wife syndrome. Then, and what Lana referred to only as the happening, it was Good Friday, 1958. That evening, Lana and Johnny were fighting. Lana said she could tell it was going to be a bad one. They were in the master bedroom and Cheryl in the room next door. Lana had told Cheryl that she was going to end the relationship with Johnny that night. Cheryl said she never saw Johnny hit her mother, but she had seen the bruises and the bloody face and knew what had happened. Lana had sworn her to secrecy, telling her the whole story, starting with Johnny in England. She told her mother to call the police, but she knew her mother wouldn't because of possible scandal. As the fighting heated up, Cheryl stood outside of her mother's door and yelled, hoping that would end the fight. But the fighting continued. Lana yelled for Cheryl to get away from the door, and Johnny is leaving. Then Cheryl heard Johnny making threats, saying he was going to cut Lana's face. Then he heard, "And I'll get your daughter too."
In that moment, everything changed. Those words hung in the air, heavy and unforgettable.
Cheryl ran downstairs into the kitchen and grabbed a knife. Running back upstairs, she stopped at her mother's door. Things quieted down as Johnny started to grab clothes. Cheryl called for her mother to open the door. Lana, tired from the fighting, gave up and opened it. Cheryl entered the room and saw Johnny standing with his arm raised and what she thought was a weapon. He stepped past Lana towards the door and Cheryl, arm still raised. Believing Johnny had a weapon and was going to make good on his threat, she stepped forward and drove the knife into Johnny's guts, and he went down hard. Lana ran to Cheryl, who was crying, and led her back to her room. When she got back in the master bedroom, Johnny was out cold. Lana took the knife and tossed it into the bathroom sink, then called her mother. In just minutes, Lana's mother arrived with a doctor. The doctor, who was a family friend, shot adrenaline into Johnny's heart, but it did no good. Johnny was dead. A call was made to the Beverly Hills Police Department.
In an instant, a child was forced to act in a situation no one should ever face. One split second changed everything for Lana and Cheryl, and the consequences were only just beginning.
There was only one lawyer who bigwigs in Hollywood counted on when they were in trouble: Jerry Geisler. Geisler had defended Errol Flynn and Charlie Chaplin when they were accused of rape. He represented Marilyn Monroe when she divorced Joe DiMaggio. He was the go to guy for the rich and uber famous. It's unclear who made the call: Lana, the doctor, her mother, or maybe even the studio. Whatever the case, Geisler would make it to Lana's house almost at the same time as the cops. The cops barely beat the press to Lana's house. It seems the police in LA wasted no time tipping off the media. Surely cops were paid for good information, and a possible murder involving Lana Turner was as good as it gets. Lana and Cheryl rode to the police station in style, Geisler's limo. Some questions had been asked at the murder scene, but formal questions only took place after the mother and daughter had time to confer with Geisler. This would help fuel rumors that Lana had actually killed Johnny and was going to have Cheryl take the fall.
The cops may have beaten the press to the house, but gossip always wins in Tinseltown. Nothing like a little murder to get the town talking and the press printing whatever sells.
With Lana present, Cheryl told the story of how Johnny died. In 2001, Cheryl would tell Larry King they didn't want anyone to say they showed favoritism, a star's kid or something like that, because they kept me overnight in the Beverly Hills police station in a cell. Johnny's body was identified by mob boss Mickey Cohen. It turns out that Cohen had a hand in Johnny and Lana's relationship from the start. He had funded Johnny's courtship of Lana. Cohen had planned to push Johnny and Lana together in order to blackmail Lana. Cohen told the press that he didn't understand what happened. He painted the picture of a happy relationship between Johnny and Cheryl. He even said that Johnny, Cheryl, and he would go horseback riding together. He painted Johnny as a loving father type and himself as a wonderful pseudo uncle. Now remember, this is the leader of the mob. Mickey Cohen has had multiple people killed. Weeks after the murder, Lana's lawyer received photos of a naked sleeping Lana Turner. The photos had been taken by Johnny. Lana and her lawyer destroyed the photos and the negatives. Cohen knew that Johnny had kept love letters that he had exchanged with Lana. Cohen had one of his goons break into Johnny's house and leak those letters to the press. Cohen might not have been able to make money off of Lana, but he could end her career. Cohen fully admitted that he leaked the letters to the press.
Let me get this straight. He funded the courtship, tried to blackmail her, and then leaked intimate letters, all while pretending to be the caring uncle. Only in Hollywood, baby.
Cheryl was moved from the Beverly Hills PD to juvenile hall. No criminal charges were filed. She was being held as a witness, adjudicated juvenile. The DA held a press conference and tried to tell the press that there would be no special treatment in this case. On Monday, following Easter, Cheryl was brought into the court for pre-detention hearing. Geisler told the judge that Johnny's death was justifiable as Cheryl had reason to fear for her life. He asked that Cheryl be released to her grandmother. The DA recommended that Cheryl not be released on bail. He was afraid that Cheryl would be pressured either by the mob or her mother. Beverly Hills police chief wanted to go to trial right away, stating they had the weapon and the person who used it. The judge agreed with the DA and ordered that Cheryl be held until the issue was resolved.
Even with every reason in the world to act in self defense, the law treated her like a suspect first and a terrified child second, and her life was about to change forever because of it.
The judge ordered a coroner's inquest. Unlike a grand jury, a coroner's inquest is not legally binding. The suspect can still be charged or not following, no matter the outcome of the inquest. Giesler was able to get Cheryl excused from testifying due to trauma. The only witness with any real knowledge of the events to testify was Lana. The inquest was televised, and whether Cheryl walked away free or was charged with murder came down to how Lana Turner performed. The inquest was filled with press. The courthouse had 160 seats in the gallery, 120 were reserved for the press. A line outside the courthouse stretched around the block for the remaining 40 seats open to the public. CBS and ABC broadcast it live. No idea what NBC was doing. As numerous radio stations did too. Peyton Place was still showing in the theaters and saw its ticket sales jump with the death. Mickey Cohen was the first witness to be called. He refused to, quote, identify the body on the grounds that I may be accused of this murder. He was on the stand for all of 2 minutes before he left the building. Doctors gave all the gory details of how the knife had sliced through Johnny, leading to his death. Then the star of the show, Lana, took the stand. She testified for an hour, broke down in tears twice on the stand, and answered questions from the coroner and Giesler, and the jury watched. She recounted every detail of the fight and the stabbing. At the end of her testimony, the court was put into recess. Lana was mobbed by the press. It looked like she was about to faint, and Giesler was able to grab her and pull her out of the crowd. Without Lana, the press started to break down her performance on the stand as if it were one of her movie roles.
Court was about truth, but the press treated it like a box office preview. Lana testified about death and terror, and the press treated it like it was a scene from her latest movie. In classic Hollywood fashion, real tragedy was swallowed up by the headlines that sold.
The inquest continued after Lana left the stand. Detectives testified that they were confused by some of the evidence. The knife looked brand new, but had wear and chips on it. Oddly, supposedly Lana and Johnny had actually bought that knife earlier that day. There were no fingerprints on the knife. No blood was found in Lana's room or on her clothing. Light and dark hair fibers were found on the knife but could not be identified. As the inquest was winding down, a man jumped from the gallery and yelled, "Lies! All lies! The mother and daughter were both in love with Stampino. Johnny was a gentleman." Who the man was is completely unknown. Did he really know something? Was he a nutcase? Was he a plant by Cohen? No one knows. After being led from the courthouse, he simply disappeared. This all added to the conspiracies that maybe not all the facts were known. The jury took less than an hour to come back with a verdict of justifiable homicide. They determined that Cheryl had acted in self defense. While not legally binding, the DA announced the next day that he would not pursue charges. However, he did launch an investigation into Lana's fitness as a parent.
Cheryl was cleared, but in true Hollywood fashion, the story wasn't over for Lana. Headlines and whispers quickly turned the question to her ability as a mother.
Cohen went to the press. "It's the first time in my life that I've seen a dead man convicted of his own murder. So far as the jury is concerned, Johnny just walked too close to that knife." The fact that Mickey Cohen didn't seem to care about the fact that Johnny was abusing Lana and possible threats to Cheryl is not surprising. It's not like the mob's really known for their moral code.
Careful, Mick. Say too much, and we might have an unwelcome visitor. Maybe watch what you say about mobsters. I don't want them coming knocking on my door.
Well, as far as Mickey Cohen, he would end up going to federal prison for tax evasion in 1962. After getting out in 1972, he would claim that he had made contact with Patty Hearst's kidnappers, but of course, nothing ever came of this, and he died of natural causes 4 years later in 1976. So I don't think we have to worry about Mickey Cohen.
There's other mobsters.
There's no such thing as a mob.
Ooh, what? I am not related to this man. Just ignore me. Ignore him.
I learned that from the mob hearings in the 1950s when they told Congress there's no such thing as a mob.
Oh, okay.
And the mob wouldn't lie about being in the mob. Lana's career rebounded after the happening. She went on to make many more movies and had parts in 3 television shows. As for her love life, she went on to marry 3 more times for a total of 7, with none lasting more than 4 years. It seems the sweater girl who millions fell in love with was never able to find lasting love for herself.
And as for Johnny, let's just hope there's a special place in hell for mobsters who beat women who are then killed by 14-year-old girls. Cheryl, she went on to live with her grandmother. She and her mother had several years of, let's say, a strained relationship. Fortunately, she and Lana were able to reconcile well before Lana's death. Cheryl went on to Cornell University, found success as a model. She had inherited her mother's striking looks. a writer and businesswoman primarily in real estate. In 2014, she married her longtime partner, Joyce Leroy. I don't know if this Leroy was related to Leroy the director. I didn't look into that, but it's would be very interesting. They had been together for 40 years before being able to get married, finding the lasting love her mother couldn't. Today, she's alive and well at 82 years old. Both Cheryl and Lana were able to thrive after the events of the happening. They are a testament to survivors and the ability to overcome tragedy. Thank you to thecrimelibrary.org for the info in this episode. This has been History is Criminal. Join us again next week as Kim and I dig into the dirty past once more, looking at another celebrity scandal, this one from a little further back, the 1590s. Until then, if you like what you heard, tell a friend, and if not, tell an enemy. Never suffer alone.